Okay, so now we're going to do the bullet, and I'm a complete idiot. Complete idiot. Um, and the reason for that, there's no reason why I'm an idiot. Okay, it's just that I'm an idiot. I I got partway through this, about 10 minutes into this, and realized I didn't have my headset connected even to the computer. I have two computers here, and I switch back and forth. This is my the computer I use to record everything. It's got a much larger hard drive space, and I'm probably going to end up. What I'm going to do, instead of redoing this, because it's so simple, what I've done, which is really nothing. All I did was paint down a base color. These are, obviously the bullet chain here. I just painted, like a dark gray here, and like a bronzy brownish type texture here. Okay, and then I added a primer. Okay, which is just a silver dot right in the middle. Okay, I just swirled that out. All right, and then I added some grime, which I tuned back to about 50%, and I made it overlay. If I put that to 100% and normal, it's really just a black noisy texture. And I can show you oops, I want to be on paintbrush, my brush settings here. I used this stamp here. Okay, randomize. I turned the strength down a little bit to about 70 or so, and just boosted up the stamp spacing. And then I used a black. Okay, did a little bit close to bronze. Okay, like pretty dark. And I just went in and okay, and I used a pretty big brush and a pretty light pressure. Okay, so you can see I add a little bit more here and there. Well, now I just scribbled across the whole thing. Okay, no real concern there. However, I do want to make sure that the primer doesn't get any of that dirt, because it's so smooth that it's like crap through a goose, right? Water off a duck's back or something. Got that little oil, super whatever. I'm gonna stop talking. And then I did a specular map, and the specular map, let me just duplicate it really quick and show you. If you watch the rest of the tutorial, the first parts where I did the gun, I did the exact same thing. The only difference is I painted the bullet tip itself completely white in the specular, so that it was full-blown shiny. And I was explaining that these are old, these shells. These get reused. They get picked up off the field and gathered and then sent back, and then they get reloaded. As long as they're not damaged too much, they're perfectly reusable. The bullets, however, completely smash, and they're not reusable unless you were to actually melt them down or whatnot. So I painted that noisy thing, and I use the same basic brushes here. I just use a white color, okay, and just went in and just kind of spackle it out like that. Pretty much exactly what I did on the gun. And just to continue it, I'll do a pretty light coat on the clips here. The other thing I showed is that you can see I painted on this one, and these aren't actually getting updated, but if I just tap Alt, they automatically get updated. So if you're doing something that's tiling like that and it's not updating for you, and you don't see it happen, just tap Alt really quick. So I'm gonna put that back into my specular channel, and that's all I did. I mean, I could redo it, with everybody watching, but it's pointless because it's nothing. I really haven't done anything great. The part that I got to was what I was going to do is I was going to put a little lead tip on here, and so with that I'm going to hit my base color. There's a reason all of these settings were off actually. I don't want any stamp spacing. I want full. I want a pretty kind of darkish, but definitely fully desaturated gray here. Okay, and then I'm going to look right down the middle as best I can. I'm going to shrink my brush to about there, and just paint a little bit of a silver tip. Okay, So that's kind of the lead core. This is like a Full Metal Jacket type bullet here. Okay, and I don't need an awful lot more than this. The only thing that's really left to do is, if I wanted to, I could highlight some of these edges here. So if I come back to a white, use my stamp, use my spacing, bring that down, and just kind of run along these edges a little bit in full white. That'll help with a little distinguishing. Okay, hit right around here. It doesn't matter if I actually cross over this because that is full white. So just painting white on white. A little bit lighter here, but just go around it just to slightly highlight this edge to make sure it's gonna kind of stand out. Okay, get in here and get this edge. Not too close. Sometimes if you're too close, your paint won't actually apply. So if you notice that the paint's not dropping down, try zooming out a little bit. Okay. That way those spots are always, no matter what, fully lit. Now I am keeping these shells pretty shiny. It's pretty dull here, because they're metal, you know. I mean, and they're slightly smooth metal. The other thing that I explained was that if you look here, my bullets are actually basically like a really horrible tile. You see a little dark pattern here. It's in the exact same spot on every bullet. So what I'm going to do when I'm done with this is when I go back into max, I'm going to take each bullet and I'm going to rotate it 36 degrees because this has 10 segments, right? 360 divided by 10 is 36. So if I rotate each one like 36 degrees and then do this one 36 degrees twice and then do this one 3 times or 4 times, then I can give myself a little bit of variation. Plus any logos or writing that I put on the ends here, you know, the caliber and all that, won't be in the exact same orientation, and it'll just give it a little bit more variance. Okay, minor thing. You know, in a game engine, like if you put down a bunch of logs, or boxes even, you're gonna want to like rotate them just a little bit so that they're not all perfect. Even though if you go to a warehouse and you look at the boxes on the shelves, a lot of times they are perfectly lined up, but you know, in a video game type world, especially, you know, just depending on what your theme is, if you want to vary things, the quickest and easiest and most brainless way to do it is to literally just rotate it. Okay, just change its orientation a little bit and it's fine. Alright, so with that specular almost done, let me add a new layer, just call it scratches. Okay, I don't want any spacing. Actually, I don't want any spacing. I don't want to use a stamp. Just keep that at 100. Keep a pretty small brush. And I'm going to do a 0 space here. Just gonna put a couple scratches on this guy. You can see what looks like a seam here, but that won't show up that much when I do my final treatment in Photoshop, which is actually going to be to fill my very background layer with whatever the main tone is. Okay, so just some random marks. Keeping in mind that this gets quite often, considering that I'm making these used. I've bought brand new bullets and seen that the casings are actually used, and I've bought brand new bullets where the casings have actually are brand new. You don't really got an awful lot of dirt or anything on there. I don't want to, you know, do anything in here because this is an unspent cartridge, which means there's not going to be a dent in there or anything. couple of scuffs on these clips. I do not want to do too many distinguishing details because this I really can't rotate too much. So just a couple of little minor things here and there will do it. Okay. So far it's okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a stamp here for use on there. So I'm just going to use this same Photoshop file I had open for that stitching that I did prior. And I'm going to show a grid. And this is a 1024, so if I hit Control K here, it's going to bring up my preferences, and I'm going to go Guides and Grids. And I want a grid line every 512 with one subdivision. That's going to give me one nice center point, real easy to hit. And if I use my circular marquee and hold Alt, I do it from the center. If I don't hold Alt, I draw out from the side. Hopefully that's clearly visible, but if I hold Alt, it does it from the center, and then I hold Shift at the same time, I get this perfect circle. Okay? Now I'm just going to draw this out basically as a guide. Now I get Control Shift I. It's actually going to invert just the selection, and I'm going to just fill that with black real quick. Okay, just so I have like kind of a guide here. I'm not going to use this layer. And then what I want to do is I want to actually use the Circle Shape tool, which is somewhere on here. My brain's missing it. It's... where are you? Not there. Why can't I see this? Am I skipping right over it? Where's my shape tool? There it is. No. This is embarrassing. I have no idea where it is. I guess it's up here. That's stupid. Okay. I'm going to go down to this bottom layer here. And I'm going to make a circle like that. And then if I hit my text tool, I can actually click on that. Oh yeah? Okay. Thank you for that. Let me get rid of this. I think what happened is I actually made a shape over here, and that's what killed me. And look, there's the shape tool now. Okay. Now I think should be able to type right on that. And so I'm going to type 7.62 space mm. And now just hit Control A here, Control T to bring up my type options for my text. And I want something pretty bold, so I am not a big fan of fonts. There's a lot of people out there that love them, but I personally I cannot stand working with fonts. I am a graphic designer of roughly 15, a little bit more than 15 years. And it's not that fonts aren't a complete necessity. It's just like, you know, some people's like, oh yeah, I've got 500,000 fonts, you know? It's like, dude, have fun searching through that. You know? That is not my idea of a good time. It's really not. I'm sick of it. So, and that's why I make video games now. I can't deal with it anymore. So what I do is I just keep the generic ones here. I have like a few. I'll keep a font when I need something very specific, you know. But my list is basically the standard Photoshop list of fonts, because I've worked at jobs, you know, 9-to-5ers where they've got a ton of fonts, and you know, it's just like, you know, I want you to come up with a nice, cool font for this. Okay, well, I'll see you in 3 hours, because I got to go through 500,000 fonts, you know, and pick 10 of the best ones that I want, and I would do that on a daily basis, and eventually you hate fonts. So I think that's all right for now. 7.62 millimeters Okay, and I want the color actually to be black. Alright, I can pretty much hide that layer. Now, there's a... I don't want to actually edit the... In Illustrator, this is really easy because you get this little... You just hold Control and you get this little bar that you can drag. And it's here in Photoshop, but... I'll be damned if I can't find it. You know, I don't really work too much in Photoshop, but what I can do is just... I don't even really need to rotate it because I can rotate the stamp, so I'm not worried about it. So what I'm going to do is I can delete this now that the text is out, because it actually basically makes a copy of this vector circle in there for me. And actually, I'll just keep it there. That way I can pretty much hit it again. And now I can make a logo. Now, you know, like normally it'd be like Luger or Ruger or whatever. But I don't want to use anything real. I just want to make something up. And what I've been doing for my game is like Acme, kind of. I've just been going with Ratco. Rat Corp. Okay. And that'll work alright. And then, but I do want it black. Come on. Get down in there in the black. Alright. And then I could probably do something here. You know, I'll put my little paws there. That'll be fun. Alright. So all I need to do is hide all this. And then just save as. And just call this bullet markings. And make it a pung. Okay. PNG. And then come up to my stencils here and add stencil. Cancel that real quick. Okay, so I just navigated to that. The reason I always pause whenever I navigate is because if it goes to my root directory, my directory structure is so awful. So I want to kind of center that. Make it a little smaller. I don't want it to be huge. I want it to be wee. Tiny. Okay, and then I'm going to make a new bump map. And I'm just going to call this markings bump 1024. And then I can just okay, nothing's happening. Gotta figure out what's going on here. Yeah, this is, my camera's a little too close. Just, oops. Yeah. S is what I want to hold. I held Alt there. Just want to center that pretty good. Okay. Then I can, what? Ah. Okay. Paint tools projection. Okay. There we go. Now my brain's working. So Ratco 7.62 millimeter. And I'm gonna grab my little rat paw. Who doesn't love paws? I ask all my friends that. That's my gamer tag, is paws. And that actually should do it. Now this actually needs to be inverted. So I'll just hit the invert tool. Invert. That'll push that in instead of bump it out. This was already painted black, so. And then really all I gotta do is just drop this down. Is it doing anything? Yeah. To about there. And then I'll hit with my blur here. The camera's still too close. This is a very, very small object. A blur strength of 0.5. Let's see if that. Yeah, it's nice. That way I don't have any weird, you know, really ugly aliasing. I'll just blur everything. It's a little worn out. Okay. Keeps the detail, but the aliasing is gone. Alright, now I want to grab my primer and duplicate it. And I'm going to shrink that guy and move that down here. And then I'm going to take my blur tool to about 6. Oops, that is stupid. Again, I'm too close. Okay, then I'm going to make a duplicate of that. And pick my bottom one and adjust the color here to be black. Okay, so that dips it down. Then if I actually duplicate that again, it should increase the strength, okay? And I'll duplicate the top one again to increase the strength of that. Okay, it actually gives me a little bit of noise in there, which I'm actually enjoying. Okay, I like that. Primer might be big, but it's a pretty substantially large bullet, so rifle primers are much larger than pistol primers, and I'm not doing this to spec or anything like that. So then what I can do is I can just isolate these here if I hold Alt on one of them, and then bring, see, every time I show it, it wants to drop me back up to the top of my list here, which is just dumb. Now let me see what happens if I merge these, if I lose any of that. Nope, it's good. Get my grime and my base color back. Okay, so there's the rear of the bullet, which doesn't look too shabby. Now what I can do is I can go back to my grime layer, go back to my paintbrush, okay, over here, go back to my black color, use my stamp, drop my strength, give myself some spacing, and again I'm too close, and I'm going to decrease the strength on that pretty substantially to less than 10, and I'm just going to put a little bit of dirt in there. What that'll do is that'll bring out these details just a little bit. Okay, not worried about going out of the lines or anything like that. Just to kind of localize that, to anchor it a little bit. Okay, this is dirtier in there. Get a little in here more. It'll accentuate this rim here. Which is quite an important part of a bullet manufacturing design. Okay. The other one that I want to do is from my specular, get my scratches here, and duplicate, and stick that on my bump map. And then invert the color, basically by just dropping the value, and then changing the amount. Okay, let me see what happens if I blur it a little bit. That might be a little much, so let's try 2. That's better. I just hit a couple of these guys. In fact, I'll pretty much hit them all. I don't want any sharp gouging over this stuff, wear and tear and whatnot. It's going to make these damaged areas be a little bit smoothed over and rubbed out, worn down. Okay. And what I'm going to do is grab my faces here, just get this one bullet, hit Shift I? No. Control Shift I? There we go. H. always forget my hotkeys. Now I'm going to go back to this grime, drop that down to 50 and overlay again. I don't want that to be so painfully obvious. There's usually no markings on the shell whatsoever, on the shell casing. Same thing on the bullet. But if you wanted to, you could write something on here like "Dear Enemy, Merry Christmas," you know, or something. From us to you with love. Whatever you wanted. I'm not going to do anything funny on there. It's too low resolution, to be honest with you. And really, that's it. The bullet's good. I mean, it's fine. Looks like bullets. You know, you can see I really didn't do an awful lot. Just a basic specular, a little highlighting here and there. The main thing, just adding this, and I just created it in Photoshop with text tool. Okay, threw a little goofy logo on there, added the primer, used the diffuse color to make the bump. Okay, and that's it. Now this is going to have a this specular map here is going to actually double as a gloss map too, with a possible bit of multiplying or whatnot going on inside of the engine UDK to make sure this is a little bit more glossy than this. These highlights are broader than here. This is a sharper highlight there. Okay, so I can use a specular map. I could paint a gloss layer if I wanted to, but that's just another texture I do not want to add to the overhead. Okay, I don't want 500 gigs of textures. All right, gotta make sure that I'm working within, you know, like a budget. So I usually do not create a gloss map. I usually do some math on a specular layer if I need to change the gloss, which in UDK is actually called specular power. Okay, it's not called gloss. So there we go. That's pretty good. So I'm going to stop this now, and then the next part of the video is actually going to be no more art. It's going to be all of the management of all of these things that we've painted. It's going to take a while, actually. It's easy, but it's actually slightly confusing. But at the same time, it's a very necessary step to doing this right. We have to get all these layers out of here, and we have to turn them into TGAs, and we have to balance them. And really, the only option is to balance them in our target platform, which is, for me, UDK. So I need to go and I need to make the materials. I need to check how the textures are going to run in the materials and whatnot. And after that, basically, you know, once it looks good in the engine, I'm done, you know. But I do need to manage these guys. And what I'm going to do here is just going to put a little bit of an indication that there's some kind of connection here, just with a little bit of a bump, a little circle right there. I didn't make a cylinder for it. Okay, now if I actually turn my light, which can be sometimes kind of irritating, you can see it there. Turn it up, see it there. They're not even or nothing, but it's just enough. I might as well. I've got the texture there. Okay. So a little bit of a hinge kind of thing. If I hold control, I can actually take a little dot out of it. Let me make this one a little bit bigger. I'm not even worried that it's not perfectly circular. It's so small, but it'll pick up a little bit of a highlight there, add a little bit of extra detail, and you can see it from here even. So that goes a good way. Alright, so that's it. So yeah, so when I return, we'll start managing all of these layers, which means we're going to come into Mudbox, we're going to export all of our channels out, then we're going to be in Photoshop for the majority of the time, and then the very last part of the tutorial will actually be applying these materials to the gun, which will be using my handy dandy new fandangled material technique using linear interpolates and second UV channels and mask images to make sure that I have one material that uses multiple textures applied across. So I'm simulating using more than one material, which would be like a multi-sub coming out of Max, and just multiple materials in UDK, because you can always say, okay, this is the bullet and this is the clip, and I just use a gray color for that, and it's completely separate materials that I can apply to the model based on what they're assigned to on the faces. However, doing that does add a draw call for each one of those you add. So by being able to combine the materials, I've mentioned this before, I drop those draw calls, so the gun, each and every instance of this gun is going to count as just one object in the world. And that's going to go a long way, especially if this game were to reach, say, 64 players, and every single player manages to pull out this gun at the same time, and then they all stand in a circle and watch the FPS drop. Basically, if I have 4 textures, it's going to be 64 times 4 objects. It'll be basically having the same thing as 256 of those guns in the same scene. But if I do one draw call by using one material, then I only have as many draw calls as I have individual objects, and that's why it's a pretty good optimization step to do that. And the sacrifice is to actually end up with a little bit of a more complex material, obviously. However, what's the difference between 5 separate materials using 5 separate textures than one material using 5 textures? You still have to use the 5 textures, you know? So it's better to let the engine compile one material and then just instance that out all over the place than having it to say, okay, compile material 1, instance it out, compile material 2, instance it out, compile material 3, instance it out, back and forth 5 times that you're hitting the CPU. Yes, it happens really, really, really fast, but like I said, if there's too many of these in the scene, and then you have too many other objects in your scene, say you have a map and it's got, so let's just say the maximum number of objects in the world is 1,000, and you have 250 objects in the world. Well, if each one of those objects has 5 separate materials, you've gone over your budget. Okay, even though you're a quarter of the amount of objects you have, if they all had 4 materials, that would be exactly 1,000. Okay, 250 times 4. All right. You'd be exactly at your budget. So you can only get away with 250 objects. However, if each and every one of those objects only ever has one material, you can have 1,000 separate objects and still be at your budget, which is going to be a much richer environment than only being limited to 256. So that's the point. And it's almost the whole reason why I did the whole UV tile thing coming out here. Okay, so it all ties together in the end, and it's a system that I think I invented. I don't know how many people have done it. I know that I didn't see anybody else do it, and I came up with the idea myself. So, and it works. It works great. I use it on a lot of stuff, and I'm pretty proud of it. It's not really all that. It's not all that complex. It's not something that you might immediately think to do. So, if you are a UDK user, stay tuned, because that is going to be pretty handy for you, especially if you're working on a really rich game and you're already starting to blow your budget, and your FPS and performance or whatnot are not cutting it anymore, and you got to start trimming stuff out. This might help. Hopefully it does. So it's helped me. Okay, so I'm going to stop this, and when I come back, we're going to start managing these textures to get them into TGA files that we can bring into UDK. We'll see you then.